Would you want a prison or released prisoners in your neighborhood? Janos Martin is the Director of Policy and Campaigns with the Close Rikers campaign. Welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you, Sam. Happy to be here.
What is this Close Rikers campaign?
So my organization, Just Leadership USA, which is a national criminal justice advocacy organization, along with the Cattell Center, Vocal New York, and 145 other organizations from across New York City, have gotten together with the shared mission of closing Rikers. We launched this campaign in April of 2016. Since then, we've been organizing in neighborhoods across the city. We've been meeting with elected officials, holding rallies, trying to change policy, all with the goal of significantly reducing the number of people who are locked up in New York City in jail, with the mission to close Rikers Island and all the jails there. And we had a huge win a few weeks ago when the mayor announced that it would be the policy of the city to move forward with closing Rikers. But for us, the work is really just getting started because for us, Rikers represents not only a failed jail facility, but also years of bad criminal justice policies that we still need to fix.
Is there a gap between the mayor's position on this and the governor's position on this?
Yeah, well, I think you would have to first figure out what the mayor's position is. He did say that he supports closing Rikers. He has not come out with a formal plan, so we're still waiting to see what his plan is. He said that it would take no less than 10 years. The governor has criticized that as being too slow. The governor said 3 years. For us, it's not really about the number of years a politician says. It's whether their actions actually get us to a place where we can close Rikers. So for us, it's about reforming our bail system, reforming our speedy trial system, giving people more opportunities to heal outside of the criminal justice system, whether it's mental health issues or substance use issues, or young people having opportunities to work. So we could all pick a number for the number of years it should take, but the more important thing is to actually pass the policies that'll change our system.
So repeat some of this again. What are the things that need to be done before you can close Rikers? And what's important about this? Is it what it means for the persons who are at Rikers, or what it means for the community?
Sure. I think it's important for all New Yorkers. Certainly there are some communities that have been very heavily policed and very subject to the whims of the criminal justice system for generations, right? And we all know which communities those are. East New York, Brownsville, South Bronx, Bushwick. But at the same time, this is an issue that affects all New Yorkers because we're spending $247,000 per bed per year to keep people at Rikers. That's clearly money that should be invested in communities on all kinds of other things, whether it's jobs programs, schools, health, mental health. So to answer the first part of your question, what do we need to do now to actually get to closing Rikers? The area where we're all in agreement, the Close Rikers campaign, the mayor and the governor, is that we need to get the number of New Yorkers who are in jail down. So the main ways you do that are by fixing bail, and that means not locking people up at Rikers Island because they're too poor to afford bail for small charges. It means fixing speedy trial. That's the length of time somebody is waiting on Rikers, in some cases for many years before their trial actually starts. That's for no one's benefit to have that system. So that's another part of the reform that we're pushing. And most importantly, to make sure that when people run into issues with the criminal justice system, our first instinct isn't just to lock people in a cage on an island, but instead to figure out what's wrong, how can we help that person and by extension help their family and the community moving forward.
But there are people who say that the numbers at Rikers are down. It used to be 22,000, now it's down to 10,000, and that doesn't support a closed Rikers.
Oh, actually, I think I think those numbers are correct, and in fact, it does support what we're doing. To close Rikers, you have to bring the population down further, and the fact that the population of Rikers has gone down for 23 years in a row since the mid-90s, even without some of the reforms I'm talking about, just go to show that it's definitely doable to bring it down further. So I think it doesn't cut against closing Rikers. I think Rikers as an island, right, has been a very dangerous and corrupt place for many, many years. I mean, really since it opened in the 30s, it's been a problematic penal colony. So now here we are in 2017, we don't need Rikers Island as a city. It never really was in line with our values, and it certainly isn't now. So now is a perfect time to move on and start a new chapter.
So the question is, where are you going to put these people? I mean, there are many neighborhoods that are saying not in my backyard.
Sure.
Where are you going to put these people?
Sure. So that's a fair question, but I think it's important to note that it's not so much where do we put people as how do we prevent fewer people from winding up in the jail system,
Well, there are
right?
two problems.
Sure. So
let's talk about the two of them.
Sure. So right now there are, as you said, about 10,000 people in the New York City jail system. It's worth noting that there are already jails in boroughs outside of Rikers Island. There is a facility in the Bronx, one in Manhattan, and of course Brooklyn House of Detention, just a 15-minute walk from here. So you could actually close Rikers Island if you succeed in reducing the population. You could close Rikers Island simply by using the footprint of existing facilities in those three boroughs and one facility in Queens, which was closed a number of years ago. So really, we're not talking about opening a bunch of new jails. The Close Rikers campaign is focused first and foremost on reducing the number of people in jail. And for us, every person you keep out of our jail system is one less bed that has to be built in the community. But I just want to be crystal clear about that, is that whatever other politicians might say, the Close Rikers campaign does not support building a whole bunch of new jails all around the city. That's never been our intention.
So what do you do with these people if they're not rehabilitated or after they're rehabilitated? I mean, I know you've given a lot of thought to that because you've been having lots of questions about why should we close Rikers.
Sure. Well, so certainly there will still be some people who wind up in our criminal justice system. I mean, this is a city of 8 million people. So, we acknowledge there will still be a role for the traditional criminal justice system to play. But I think you raised an important point where we have thousands of people coming home every year from prisons in upstate New York and whatnot. And those people get very little support, and they have all kinds of strikes against them when they get home, whether it's in employment or housing. If you imagine somebody coming home after a number of years, it's already hard enough to make it, but there are literally hundreds of restrictions on what kind of jobs these people are allowed to do. So, in general, Just Leadership USA, we believe that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, and we elevate the voices of formerly incarcerated people, not just in New York, but around the country. And certainly this issue of how to support people when they come home is really important to us. And I think employment is the key. I mean, people who can come home and work and get back on their feet are not going to wind up back in the criminal justice system.
Why Just Leadership? Just Leadership USA, but why leadership? Why Just Leadership?
Sure. So it's very important. So Just Leadership, I work on the advocacy piece of Just Leadership, which is Close Rikers campaign, things like that. A really important component of our organization is we do leadership training for formerly incarcerated leaders around the United States, including here in New York. And Just Leadership is important because I think there's been an exclusion of people who have direct experience in the jail and prison system from the criminal justice conversation for a long time. That's starting to change now, but the fact of the matter is people who have experienced the criminal justice system firsthand very often are people who have the boldest and most serious ideas for how to reform it. And so what we do at Just Leadership is help those people help elevate their voices in the discussion to make sure that when we talk about fixing mass incarceration or fixing our prison system, we're talking about real reforms, not just Band-Aids.
What is the position of the media and politicians vis-a-vis your campaign?
I mean, I think the most important thing that the media can do is ask the right questions about how we're going to reduce the number of people who wind up in jail. I think there's been a sort of jump to where are the jail sites, and I get why the media would be interested in that. I mean, it's a good story, and certainly coming off the homeless shelter story, there's a sort of attraction to which neighborhood will wind up with a jail. But for us, the most important part is not the jail siting, it's how do we get fewer people in jail in New York? And that's something where we actually agree with the mayor, we agree with the governor, the council speaker, everybody agrees there should be fewer people in jail in New York. So let's focus on how do we fix our bail system? How do we provide more support for people who wind up in the system over and over again? To us, that's the most important part here. And as for politicians, we've worked really hard to convince a lot of them to see our point of view, and we're going to keep banging away at it by organizing in communities all over the city.
You talked about homeless shelter briefly just now. Do you think that some of these people, perhaps a lot of these people, will be going into homeless shelters? There's still a lot of confusion about homeless shelters. There's still some opposition to homeless shelters being set up in neighborhoods. If you talk about homeless shelters as shelters for people who were incarcerated, how do you address that concern?
Sure. Well, even before, so really there's two groups of people worth talking about. One is the city knows, and there have been studies, that there are some people who just wind up going through the criminal justice system over and over again, right? And a lot of those folks are homeless or people who occasionally wind up homeless because of housing instability. And there's a significant overlap between homelessness and mental health issues and substance issues. So we know that there are these people who are suffering and going through the system every year, and we should be really thinking about, is putting someone in a cage the solution to that, or is figuring out a way to get them support the answer? And so certainly I think that for people who are homeless, winding up in our criminal justice system, in our jails, there has to be a better answer. And for people who come home from prison, similarly, I mentioned employment before. I mean, employment and housing are really the two issues that people struggle with when they come home. And when we have barriers to people finding housing when they come home, when it's already hard enough, I think that we're just setting ourselves up for failure. So we really need to be thinking about housing for people who come home.
I know there'll be lots of questions about housing these persons. How do you monitor their behavior when they are in these homes, and how do you prevent them from engaging in the kind of activity that may lead them back to incarceration?
I mean, I think it goes back to the first thing I said, which is that most people coming home want to get their lives back on track.
You think so?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I'm not going to fight you on that one. Go on.
Sure. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's lots of evidence to show that when people have housing stability and they have a job, I mean, that's two big steps on the way to someone not getting in trouble with the criminal justice system again. I think when we put people's backs against the wall and say, good luck finding housing, good luck finding a job, we're really setting people up for failure.
What about the present Trump presidency, and what does that mean to incarceration levels?
So, while certainly we've heard some pretty nasty rhetoric from both the president and his attorney general doesn't seem to have any idea what New York City's like. He's, thinks of it as this crime-ridden, terrible place.
He lives here.
Oh, I'm talking about the Attorney General.
Oh, the Attorney General.
Yes, but even the President doesn't seem to have any idea what New York City's like in 2017. I will say this, criminal justice was making some real strides under President Obama, and the fact of the matter is, though, most criminal justice reform, good or bad, is happening at the state and local level. So while the President's rhetoric on criminal justice has not been good, it's not something that we're overly worried about, because we think a lot of great changes can happen in states and in cities. So here in New York City, right, we got a commitment to close Rikers while Trump was president. We have raised the age passed while Trump was president. And so we're going to keep banging away at reforms at the state and local level and not be overly worried by the person in the White House.
Okay. There's a Senator Jeff Klein.
Yes.
Who has said that with only 137 16 and 17-year-olds at Rikers, down considerably from 2012, that a change could be accomplished by moving young inmates to the Horizon Juvenile Center. First of all, do you agree with him? And what is this Horizon Juvenile Center?
Sure. So like I said, the Close Rikers campaign started about a year ago, and one of the first wins of the Close Rikers campaign was we got a commitment from Mayor de Blasio last summer, well before Raise the Age passed, to move 16 and 17-year-old kids off of Rikers. And to us, that's the lowest hanging fruit. I mean, these are kids, and the passage of Raise the Age legislation, which was just a few weeks ago, actually mandates that all 16-year-olds have to be off of Rikers Island by next year, and all 17-year-olds have to be off of Rikers Island by 2019. So that's very encouraging, because Rikers Island is no place for anybody, but especially 16 and 17-year-olds. Now, what do we think about the Horizon Center? I mean, it's, for us, it's always about reducing numbers first, right? There have to be fewer 16 and 17-year-olds locked up for us to feel like we're moving in the right direction. And I think, to the city's credit, they actually have done a lot of good work in making sure that more kids have alternatives than in the past. And then with respect to Horizon, we'd have to make sure that the facility, when it takes in 16 and 17-year-olds, gives them access to everything that they need, from visitation to good schooling to good programs. Now, I'm convinced that all three of those things are better will be better at Horizon than they would be at Rikers. Rikers isolation makes it extremely difficult for people to visit, for programs to visit, for family to go there. So I think anything is an improvement over Rikers, but obviously we would withhold our judgment about any new facility until we learn more about it.
We've been hearing so much in the news, youngsters in school stabbing other people, youngsters bringing guns to school. Obviously, if these people are found guilty, they're going somewhere. Probably Rikers, probably, I don't know where else. But how do you begin to, and I don't know if this is the right question for your organization, but how do we attempt to get a change of behavior in these youngsters, these teenagers?
Sure. Well, I said earlier that the Close Rikers campaign is made up of almost 150 organizations, and certainly I always want to shout out the organizations that are doing really good work outside of our expertise. And so, people like the Alliance for Quality Education are doing a lot of great work on the school-to-prison pipeline, and I think not speaking for them, but I think they might say something like, the need to focus on working with kids at a young age to make sure that they don't go down a certain path. Because what we do is very often sort of abandon a child and sort of label them a troublemaker, suspend them, discipline them, and often these kids drop out of school. And the kids who drop out of school have a completely different trajectory in terms of their involvement in the criminal justice system in the future than kids who stay in school and kids who stay in class. And so, again, I'm not the expert on this issue, but I think we have to remember that we're all kids once, and we need to stick with kids and try to shape them for the best.
We're running out of time. How do we get people to make their position known on Close Rikers?
Absolutely. Well, they can go to our website, closerikers.org. At closerikers.org, you can learn a lot more about the campaign, including statistics about why Rikers is a place that needs to be closed, what our plans are for the future, how to get involved, and sure, if you want to critique us too, we welcome all kinds of comments there.
Yes, thank you. Janos Marton.
You got it.
Janos Marton, Director of Policy and Campaigns at the Close Rikers campaign. You can watch this Brooklyn 45 program on our Brooklyn 45 TV YouTube channel. And we'd love you to go to our Facebook page and post your comments. Again, if you know a middle school or high school student who has an average of 90 or above and you'd love to have him or her featured on Brooklyn 45, go to our Facebook page and message us or email us at info@brooklyn45.com. On behalf of our entire Brooklyn 45 production team, thank you for watching our program. And don't forget, go to our Facebook page and like us.